Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Setting the Westworld on Fire. I'm your host, Cy once again, filling in for the wonderful Ryan Shepard, who is doing the supporting role here. Say hello, Ryan.
Hello, Ryan.
All right, as you can tell, Ryan is getting better. We pray and wish for his that he's recovering a little bit each and every day. But until then, I'll be your host, and let's start it off with episode 6, titled "The Adversary."
Ooh, the Adversary.
A very appropriate title, Ryan, which we'll have to discuss later in the episode. There's a lot of reveals here, Ryan. We don't have too many theories for this episode, but we'll get to all of that once we explain what this episode was about.
Yep.
And it was a very good episode, I would say, Ryan. It continues. Westworld is continuing its strong string of episodes, I would say.
Well, yeah, anytime a show starts revealing its secrets, it starts to get real. Starts to get down and dirty is what it gets.
Right, and Westworld is one of these types of shows that has a very slow burn that just leaves you anticipating for reveals.
Yeah.
That's one of the main draws of this show. While it may not be for everyone, but it does have, but even for those who don't like these slow-moving revelations, it does have enough violence and sex to tie people over.
It's almost like it's produced by J.J. Abrams.
Well, that's because it is produced by J.J. Abrams.
Oh, all right. Well, that makes sense.
The wonderful J.J. Abrams, who resurrected Star Trek and Star Wars. So there's not much this guy can't do. Anyways, let's delve in. Let's first start off with Maeve, who played a very significant role in this episode. May, having discovered that she lives in that the world that she lives in is not real, is causing herself to be violently killed in this episode. In order to be repaired by Felix, who's the weak-willed mechanic that we saw in a couple of previous episodes.
Yeah, he was the one rebuilding that bird.
That is correct too, Ryan. Thank you for that. Yes, he was rebuilding the bird, and basically Maeve starts off by finding a customer who chokes her to death. A little bit of a masochist streak, if you ask me. But after getting herself killed, she's been blackmailing Felix into delving into the secrets of the administration part of the Devilos Corporation and what Westworld is herself. Eventually, the episode takes a turn where she blackmails Felix into giving her a tour of the underground facilities and to have her reprogrammed. Now, Ryan, this, to me, even though we knew all of this, it was such a revealing episode because we saw all of the levels of how Westworld is created. She saw how the hosts were created, the animals. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of dicks once again in this episode.
Yeah, not quite as many as the previous episode, but it was a dick-heavy episisode.
Yeah, I gotta ask, Ryan, do you think the creators of Westworld have a standard dick size, just out of curiosity? Like, is there a certain amount of inches you can go over or under? I don't know. I mean, or are all dicks created equally?
Hopefully they're all under.
Yeah. Sorry, it's just something that had me thinking while going through this episode. But it's a revealing part, Ryan, and you feel part amazed and you feel saddened that when you see that Maeve is realizing that her world is just a fantasy, or how big of a fantasy it is. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's kind of, in some ways, an emotional moment, but in other ways, it's a moment of amazement that you're so involved with that you can't look away.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's kind of like finding out how, like, hamburger and steaks are made, and at the same time realizing Santa Claus isn't real or the Easter Bunny, all at the same time.
Yep. So yeah, people, that guy who you make your kids sit on their lap in the mall, don't do it.
He's actually making steaks.
Indeed. Nothing wrong with that, though. But moving forward, basically Maeve realizing that that she has the ability to be programmed in different storylines, realizes that she can improve herself. Then Sylvester, the douchebag who's Felix's partner, breaks in and
Yeah,
finds
talk
out
about a
what's going
douchebag.
on. Yeah, but here is where Maeve and in some ways Felix get their sweet revenge. Just before Sylvester is about to reveal all of that, Maeve savagely blackmails and insults Sylvester to the point of mental destruction that you realize that Sylvester is just about as thin-skinned as Donald Trump.
Yes,
and
threatens him with a surgical knife, a scalpel.
Right. Exactly. And even though we don't know if Maeve would actually go through and kill him, the fact that Maeve is revealed to have a high manipulation trait makes her realize that how powerful she is, and that they took their threat seriously, because a scalpel.
Right. Well, yeah, and the question is whether or not Maeve is even capable of actually killing somebody.
That too, but like her character in Westworld, she has the ability of manipulation, and she has a high intelligence rating, Ryan.
Right.
So,
yeah, but the real question is whether or not these hosts are able to kill people. That's like the ultimate question at this point.
Honestly, Ryan, I don't think we can answer that yet, because again, based on what Dolores does, and if Maeve is an older model, then perhaps if they're ever gaining sentience, perhaps they will eventually get the power to do that if they haven't already.
Right.
But moving forward, Maeve successfully blackmails them into manipulating her ratings. And ironically, when they discover this, they realize that somebody has already been doing that for Maeve.
Mm-hmm.
Who could this person be? We'll have our possible answer in just a moment. But however, right before the episode ends, they place Maeve's intelligence rating to the highest absolute level, which in this case I believe is about 15, even though initially they said they can't do that.
Yeah, I think that's what the highest was.
Wow, an intelligent... Now, that may seem significant, Ryan, but Maeve was rated a 14 previously, so how much this one little inch could do is... could be quite interesting.
Yeah, it's just another example of how they take like a video game approach to programming these robots. Excuse me. And like, you know, when you're setting up a character in an RPG, you just put points in characteristic slots, and you know, usually you have like a limited amount, so you can focus on one thing or create like a jack of all trades. And it's just another parallel to where these writers are getting a lot of their source material, I think.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, again, the writing has just been so crisp and so engaging and engrossing, Ryan, that it is that now that we can't even predict where this show will take off. We're left waiting to our own devices and figuring out what specifically is going to happen next. But let's move on to another part. Let's talk about Bernard and Elsie, Ryan.
Yeah,
Bernard and Elsie.
Bernard had a very big part of this episode.
He did, and which is a wonderful showcase for Jeffrey Wright. Oh, and by the way, I thought that Thandie Newton did an excellent job in this episode. Mm-hmm. In fact, many reviews are calling for her to be nominated for Best Supporting Actress, something I think is definitely well-deserved, as are many other award categories for this. Mm-hmm. But moving forward, Bernard and Elsie have been investigating that satellite tracking device we found a few episodes ago. Bernard is using an old decommissioned host tracking program to figure out where the rogue woodcutter host was going to. And in doing so, he discovers 5 other hosts that are not registered to this new tracking system.
Yeah, so Bernard went down into this old like decommissioned part of the facility and was able to somehow miraculously turn on this old piece of equipment, even though there were no lights that were working. This computer just turned on, and he was able to use this old tracking system that I guess only tracks old hosts. It doesn't track the newer hosts. And, you know, they were just trying to figure out where the woodcutter was sending its information from, basically.
Exactly.
And of course, they find these other 5 hosts that are completely off the record. They aren't on the new tracking system. There isn't even any record of anything being in the area that they're located in. So that kind of piques Bernard's interest into, what's going on here.
Right. And then Bernard later goes to investigate these undocumented hosts.
Right.
And lo and behold, he finds an old farmhouse with a host family in it. And one of the members is the young boy that Ford walks with. The father host tries to attack Bernard, but Ford steps in and ceases that. And then after that, Ford explains to Bernard that the hosts are basically memories from the past, ghosts. They are first-generation models built by Arnold. However, they seem, Ryan, to closely the boy in particular seems to closely resemble Robert Ford, which makes me believe that this was a reimagining of Ford's own family.
Yeah.
Bernard, of course, is very disturbed by this and causes him to question Ford, stating that he has to bring this up because it seems to me that he believes that Ford may be losing it and creating his own reality, which isn't so far-fetched to believe, Ryan. And now it makes me wonder what Ford is up to and what other sinister motives that they have.
Yeah, it kind of questions, like, if Ford's got this special house going on with these special robots, what else does he have that he hasn't told Bernard? And, if I was Bernard, I'd be a little bit worried too, because, Ford's the guy with the keys. He basically controls the whole show, and having these kinds of secrets and having this kind of mental state probably doesn't sit well with Bernard.
No, absolutely not, Ryan. I don't think it does at all. But
yeah, it was an interesting situation. I wasn't sure like how that little bit's gonna pan out. Like what if we're gonna go back there, or if there's more to that house than we're originally led to believe. I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Well, it's an interesting question, Ryan, because after Bernard does that, he goes to meet with Teresa, who broke off, who previously in this episode broke off her affair with Bernard because Ford knew about it.
Mm-hmm.
Bernard expresses his concerns about that, which initially Teresa has also showed some interesting motives in the episode, because what happened is she earlier in the episode, Teresa approached Lee, who seems to be in a very melancholy state because he's up in the resort area drinking away his worries. Teresa apparently wanted to replace Ford with Lee, and Teresa tries to do a good job at trying to manipulate Lee, who seems to make a complete ass. Who, I have to say, Lee made a complete ass of himself in this series, Ryan. I mean, what becomes apparent is that, and we do feel a little bad for Lee. I mean, because, again, his major idea was was basically scrapped by Ford, who didn't even give it 5 seconds to think about.
Mm-hmm.
He then meets a woman at the bar. Who do you recall what her name was again, Ryan? Hold on.
I do not. Anyway, he meets this woman, and they have a kind of candid discussion regarding his thoughts on the park, and he's basically trying to come on to her, but it's kind of not working out because he's really drunk on his ass and goes down a road of more complaining than actually talking up the park.
I know, Ryan. I mean, it's I think I've had those moments where I tried to impress a lady, but either was a little too drunk or something like that.
Not you, Cy.
Oh, me, definitely, Ryan. Either I wasn't drunk enough or I was too drunk to actually get any chemistry going. It has happened to me before, Ryan. You just got to find that even keel.
Yeah, so it seems to me like Teresa's kind of using him because he's easily manipulated a lot more easily than Ford. And in a little while, we're going to find out that Teresa may have her motives for kind of trying to manipulate Lee.
Right. I think what Teresa's looking for, Ryan, is that she realizes how little control she has with Ford in charge and knows if she replaces Ford with Lee, it would be easier to control the situation. So it's really about control with Teresa. I mean, I'm assuming that's what she wants throughout the episode in any aspect for her character. But moving forward, then Lee makes a complete bigger ass of himself by literally pissing all over the
giant map room.
The giant map of Westworld, which in most cases, Ryan, I think that would get you fired. But did Lee get fired?
Not quite.
No, not quite. But while giving that map its own golden shower, Teresa then introduces Lee to the woman he was talking at to the bar, whose name is Charlotte Hale, who's a representative the board sent to observe park operations.
Right.
Wow.
So it's basically a setup.
Yep, hell of an introduction too, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the Man in Black and Terry are trying to reach Pariah and reach Walter, and they realize that a Union Army camp is blocking their way. After discovering a few routes that seem to be blocked, they make the decision to infiltrate them by disguising themselves as Union soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
While it seems to be working at first, the Union soldiers originally recognized Teddy as an accomplice in a massacre that was caused by Wyatt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Teddy then has a flashback that confirms that he was part of this massacre.
Right.
Basically, then there is a big shootout where initially both the Man in Black and Teddy are caught, and while all seems lost, Teddy frees himself, gets on the Gatling gun, and then mows down the entire group in a moment of vengeance for being killed for all of those previous years.
Yeah. Surprising
the Man in Black because he didn't think Teddy had it in him. Quite frankly, I don't think any of us did.
No, Teddy definitely took charge there. And I'm not sure whether or not it's actually what Teddy has in him, or if it's something that that Ford has programmed into him in that last session that they had together. Like I think that was part of his new behavior, was to be a little bit more of a badass.
I agree. It could be, Ryan, but is it really Ford who programmed that into him? That is the question.
So I'm not sure what's going on with that maze symbol, because it seems to be popping up literally everywhere.
I know. We see it in coffins. We see it inside the scalps of the hosts.
It was burnt. It was carved into a table that Ford saw in that Mexican town, and then it was also the brand that they were going to put on Teddy.
What do you think it could be, Ryan? I have one theory. I think that's a symbol that Arnold, or that used to be Arnold's symbol or trademark that he wants to use. But I think that might be a little too simplistic of me saying that. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like all of a sudden it's popping up everywhere, and I don't understand what the connection is going to be, like how they're going to explain that. Because I mean,
maybe
at first it was just under the scalp and then it started just recently it started just popping up almost everywhere.
Perhaps, Ryan, it's a symbol that it symbolizes freedom per se. Maybe each character, host or guest, has to go through the maze to discover themselves in more ways than one, perhaps.
Right, I'm just wondering why all of a sudden it's popping up everywhere.
Maybe it's a virus, Ryan. I mean, like a pop-up virus or something like that.
I don't know.
Well, it sure is acting like one. But anyway, Ryan, before we go further, why don't we talk about Dr. Ford and his new host family, so to speak, or host replica family. After he comes upon a symbol carved on the table that you discussed, he goes through the notebook and finds a sketch of this symbol that was left by Arnold. After checking in on his host family, he finds that the family dog, one of the 5 hosts that were initially unauthorized, has been killed. He then interrogates the child host, who initially lies, telling him the dog died of natural causes. After catching this child in the lie, the host that represents him tells him that the child host killed the dog. And under further interrogation, the hosts admit that he was ordered to kill the dog by Arnold, which seems to indicate a shock in Dr. Ford. Again, another very interesting reveal, Ryan.
Yeah, that was a little bit strange. I wasn't expecting that to happen. And I wasn't even sure. Do we know for sure whether or not that dog was real or fake?
It was, I'm pretty sure it was fake, Ryan. Okay. I don't think the hosts can have a real dog there. Everything else has been created, so I'm pretty sure they created this.
Okay, I was just wondering because, it was that whole family was built by Ford, so I don't know, he could have put a real dog in there. And I wasn't sure.
I'm pretty sure it's one of the 5 hosts, Ryan. But I could be wrong. Maybe they killed a real dog, and in that case, I would feel, I would be very uncomfortable with that scene. Let's go forward back to Elsie, Ryan. Elsie is then charged, still assisting Bernard, to inspect an old relay device used to transmit data for hosts. She activates it and then determines that Teresa has been using it, making her a saboteur. And while Bernard is having this discussion with Teresa, about Dr. Ford, Elsie catches him in time and states that it's Teresa, and Bernard then chooses his words more carefully, and the rest of their conversation remains rather ambiguous. And then she also discovers that an unidentifiable person is using it and is then captured by a dark figure before she can find out who this person is. And I think we can all assume that this person is probably Arnold.
I don't know. I actually think it might be Stubbs.
You think it's Stubbs, huh?
When I rewatched the episode, the jacket the person was wearing resembled Stubbs' black jacket.
What about Dr. Ford, Ryan? Do you think he could be another possibility?
I don't think so. I think this is not something that Ford knows is going on. I think this is the Teresa, Arnold, and maybe somebody else. Maybe if it is Stubbs, maybe Stubbs' conspiracy going on that Ford may be trying to stop, but it doesn't actually have an involvement in it.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting theory, Ryan, and I think you have a very good point. I think that it could be someone like Stubbs, or it could be someone in collusion with Teresa or Arnold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it could be Arnold, but I'm still not convinced that Arnold is a real person that exists.
Sure, but then again, who's to say that person wasn't Arnold, who's been making all the changes?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm not convinced he exists, so that wouldn't. I wouldn't believe that. I'm not ready to say that is the case.
All right, Ryan. Fair enough.
Yeah. So that was kind of the big reveal, and that Teresa was the person behind siphoning the data to somewhere off-site. I think it's safe to say that she was probably giving it to the board because Ford probably isn't willing to part with that kind of information to the board. And the board wanted it in order to make sure that the park's working okay.
Sure, and obviously now the park is not working okay because now all these many of the hosts are starting to gain sentience, and it's now starting to come apart with treachery, ulterior motives. Henceforth, the title of the show, Adversary, Ryan. Who is each of these characters seems to have an adversary in this. Whether it's Bernard and now Teresa and Dr. Ford, Elsie and the character who's conspiring against these people, Maeve and Felix and Sylvester, and vice versa for them as well. It seems to me, Ryan, that Adversary was a very appropriate title for this.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the question is Teresa and the board and whoever she's conspiring with, are they the ones that are sabotaging the hosts, that are causing them to malfunction like they are? Like, is one of them transmitting as the voice, so to speak, and trying to undo what Ford has done so they can kind of take it over?
Actually, Ryan, I'm going to have a different theory. I think there are two things going on. I think that Teresa and her group of mutiners, let's call them that, are manipulating the park and the hosts for their own gain. However, while this simultaneously is going on, I think someone like Arnold and who's possibly teamed up with the Man in Black, is somebody who is trying to destroy Westworld from within, perhaps for different motives. Maybe Arnold is playing on the Man in Black, who's convinced him to win Westworld or win the ultimate game and with a completion rating, while Arnold wants the park to be destroyed from within. Mm-hmm. That's how I think it could be.
So you think there's potentially 3 parties going on here?
I think there are. I think potentially there could be 3 parties, Ryan, or there could be many more. We don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, I think this is in ways. I think this is similar to Game of Thrones. I think everybody has something that they want to do to win, whether it's in the actual Westworld or in their own game that they're playing. Whether you're Robert Ford, you're Teresa, Bernard, the Man in Black, Arnold, all of those characters. I think that each and every one of them is playing this like it's a game. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to do their best to win and achieve their respected goals.
Okay. Yeah, so the scene at the farmhouse with that family of hosts was a little strange because I still don't understand this concept of older hosts looking like the modern hosts, like realistic and human-like. I don't know, are they upgraded as time goes on, but their insides are still the same? Or are they replaced? Like these hosts that we saw here were supposedly like first generation hosts, but they looked just as lifelike as humans, like as the modern hosts.
I don't know, Ryan. That's a good question. But what I find even more interesting is how these are hosts that Ford and Arnold created, and that Ford is keeping them to preserve their memory, which to me, that's the bigger reveal. Why is he preserving them, Ryan? I mean, I know they look like his family, but originally they may not have. They may have looked different. So what is the story behind that?
I want to stay on the realistic-looking hosts for a second, because this is kind of the big deciding factor about whether or not there are multiple timelines going on. Mm-hmm. Because the idea was that, in the past, the hosts were very unrealistic, very jerky movements. We saw, like, pretty much the very first scene of the show was an old host talking to Ford. And I thought that was like an establishment of, hey, this is how things used to be, and this is how things are now. So the idea of, like, having a timeline 30 years in the past with realistic hosts just didn't make any sense. But if the hosts looked, if like the first generation hosts looked just as human as the modern hosts, then I don't understand what the idea was behind showing that old host and suggesting that they got more realistic over time.
I would argue 2 things. One, it can't be, and we can throw away that alternate timeline theory. Or 2, it could be based on perception. You know how the old saying goes, Ryan? There are 3 sides to every story: your side, my side, and then there's the truth. It could be a perception-based theory based on that.
Or, so you're saying that, like let's take hypothetical that which is the running theory, is that William and Logan's timeline is actually taking place in the past, and so you're suggesting that those hosts and that we're seeing there may not be as realistic as we think they are. It's just they're perceiving them as realistic.
I believe that could be a possibility, Ryan, or I believe that we can't dismiss that.
That was actually one of my thoughts too, because I'm thinking about, and with the video game theories that run through, the video game themes that run through this series, the idea of like when you think about an old video game, it looks a lot better and it plays a lot better and the graphics are a lot better than it actually is. Like if you go back and you play that game, it doesn't look as good as you thought it did. Like you remember it, especially if it's like 10 years old ago or something like that. So that's kind of like what I'm playing off of when I'm thinking about like you said, they're just perceiving it as more realistic than it was because at the time, that's the most realistic that it could get.
No, Ryan, that's what I think that we can agree on that, or at least agree about the possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan, technology, which holds true in this world, is ever changing. If you go into the video game, movie, graphics, or even just regular, or even in some cases art and photography, you're always going to see things from the past. When they first come out as new, they come out as looking. If you see it as the most fantastic thing, you'll think it can't get any better than this. Going down the line, when technology improves, it'll look a lot better. So, I mean, again, with our world ever changing from a technology standpoint, things will always tend to look better a few years later than looking back on in the past. I mean, look at the invention of the black and white TV to the color TV to the HD TV,
Yeah, it's just something that I was thinking about. I still don't quite buy into the whole multiple timeline thing, but there are definitely some things that just don't add up yet that, leaving that on the table as a even remote possibility is something I think we still have to do.
Absolutely, Ryan. And keep in mind, man, this is one of the fun things about Westworld. It's slowly revealing whether or not our theories were correct and the audience's theories are correct, and just having that gradual reveal piece by piece. And again, I mean, we're just through 6 episodes. We have 4 episodes left. So, I mean, there's going to probably be some big revelations. Maybe not too many because I want to keep going on for future seasons. But again, it'll be interesting to see what kind of turn this show takes. And of course, we're going to keep all the viewers in tune by setting the Westworld on fire for all these wonderful plot twists, revelations, and character developments.
Yep, let us know what you think. Let us know what your theories are. Let us know if we missed anything. And, we'll be back next week.
That's right, everybody. Now remember, send us like Ryan said, send us your thoughts, questions, your theories, and and let us know what you want us to talk about when it comes to Westworld. We'd love to do a question and answer segment. And until then, whether we see you in Westworld or Section 17, we'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Get along, little doggy.
Y'all come back now, you hear?